Hey friends, felt like coming outside for this one. So I feel like I've said this a million times. I am by no means an expert, but I'm gonna give you kind of my personal experience and see if that helps for you. So I mentioned that a little bit last night that the way I started working with deities was a little bit weird because at first I didn't want to work with deities at all. Aphrodite was kind of my first one, and even when I started working with her, I mean, I've been practicing since 2015, so I waited a couple years, and then I worked with like her energy, but without kind of like acknowledging her as like a being, if that makes sense. And then Loki started reaching out within the last year. Honestly, for me, I saw all the signs like growing up of like foxes and spiders and, you know, etc., crows, things like that, hummingbirds, etc., because he shows up as birds a lot. And I've always had like a weird affinity for birds as well. But I never associated that with Loki because I was always just like, oh, it's just like a sign. I don't know what it means, but it's a sign, so I'll pay attention. But I never like really accepted that it was a deity. And then weirdly enough, I started getting like, I don't just mean a normal amount of like seeing TikToks of people who worship Loki, because I see a lot of like Hecate, you know, or Diana TikToks or whatever, but it was to the point that for a little bit, it was like every single TikTok I was seeing was about Loki at some point. And every time I watched one of those, it wasn't just like, oh, that's interesting. Anyway, moving on. It was like, pay attention. Much like the plane that's going above me right now. Hold on a second. Loki would call me to walk outside to do a TikTok about them and then have a plane go right overhead. That's great. But anyway, so kind of once I started accepting that like Loki was reaching out, I started being like, well, you know what? I'm at a place where like I think I am ready to like work with deities in a more like traditional sense. I mean, I'm not gonna have like, you know, this huge altar and make sure I make offerings every day and pray all the time, because that's just I'm unmedicated ADHD. That's not gonna happen. But you know, Loki's like out of chaos. I know it's a little bit different, and I started like doing research, and that is the most important thing. I know everybody says it, but I started looking into like his mythology and etc. And then I started kind of like testing with the energy, like kind of having conversations, being like, okay, so what would it look like if I agreed? I'm hesitant, and I was letting them know that I'm hesitant, and also setting boundaries. I was like, listen, I know you've got a thing with spiders, but I know you know at this point I am very arachnophobic. Like, that is not going to work for me. So, like, as long as you keep the spiders away, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, point is, it's going to be different for everyone. Eventually, I felt like we came to an agreement with the spider thing. So I said, okay, cool. So I started working with him. And then I ended up making him an altar, like, pretty quickly after. And now we've got, like, a pretty cool relationship. But it's personal. So good luck. Fingers crossed. Keep me updated.